y'all, and welcome to the Healthy by Heather Brown podcast, where I encourage you in healthy mind, body, and spirit through my Sunday reset. Let's get into it. Here at the Healthy by Heather Brown show, we're on a mission to help women take back their health, mind, body, and spirit God's way. No woo-woo, new age fluff, or mainstream nonsense. In a world pushing quick fixes and burnout, we're choosing real wellness, intentional living, and faith-filled confidence. This show is for you, sister, and it's made possible by this incredible community. If you believe in this mission, here's how you can help. 1, pause and leave a 5-star review. It's free and makes a huge impact. Share with a bestie who needs this message. 3, support the mission financially. Every little bit helps. Links for PayPal and Venmo are in the show notes. Let's rise up and change the culture, showing the world what healthy, empowered, faith-filled women really look like. What do billionaires, elite athletes, and even former U.S. presidents have in common? When they want to optimize their health and performance, mind, body, and spirit, they call Dr. Sean O'Mara. And today, so do we. He's calling out Big Pharma, ditching outdated health advice, and proving that visceral fat, not age, is the true root of disease. From sprinting in the sun to reversing chronic illness without meds, this episode is your permission slip to question everything. This conversation is the perfect continuation of the countercultural health deep dives we started with Dr. Dan Sullivan and Dr. Tony Ebel, who both exposed the cracks in our modern medical system and how our current approach to wellness is upside down. You can find those prior episodes linked down in the show notes. In this episode, we get into why sprinting in the sunshine may be better than your daily gym grind, the secret fat that's quietly stealing your vitality, why he tells some of the richest people on earth to stop working out so much, how to reverse chronic disease naturally, and why medication is rarely the answer. This is a wake-up call for the free thinkers, the faith-driven mamas, and anyone tired of being gaslit by the wellness industrial complex. Let's get into it. Y'all, we have got Dr. Sean O'Mara with us today, and I am losing my mind, excited, because we're going to dig into visceral fat, what it means, and also, y'all, like, are carbs actually good or bad for women? Like, we're going to discuss it all. You won't even believe the background he has. So, Dr. Sean O'Mara, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Heather. Super happy to be here. And importantly, your audience.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We're pumped to have you. So, Dr. Sean, tell us a little bit about your background. When I was reading your about, I was just like, whoa, this is so cool. You have everything from like Army to helping presidents. You're also a lawyer, I'm pretty sure I saw, and a doctor. So tell us how all that came about.
Yeah, so I was basically an average kid growing up in a low to middle income family in Washington, D.C., went to public schools, went to community college for 2 years while I was trying to figure out, the next steps, and studied law enforcement, went into police work, did well in college, and was able to go to Penn State University on scholarships, and then worked in law enforcement during college as a police officer. And then after I got out of college, I worked in narcotics as an undercover drug agent, which is really an unusual background for a physician. But boy, did I get firsthand experience with addiction and looking at a whole world that very few physicians get an opportunity to take a look at. So it was a great experience. And then from working undercover narcotics, I was accepted to law school. Went to Villanova University in Philadelphia, where the new Pope was actually a student at.
Heyo.
And he preceded my time, but I spent a lot of time in that seminary, actually, in that room. They had a nice chapel where he was. So
oh, cool.
I had some time there. And then from Villanova University, I became a prosecutor, and I was a full-time prosecutor, which was a great experience, but I had a hard time really achieving what I wanted to be able to achieve, which is, trying to make the criminal justice system fair and equitable. So I left the practice of law as a prosecutor, I got a scholarship to go to medical school through the U.S. Army, but I didn't have any sciences, Heather, so I had to go back to college and take 2 years of like biology, chemistry, biochemistry, physics. So I worked even though I was a lawyer and had been a police officer, I put on a polyester security guard uniform, took off my suit, and I worked as a night watchman in a factory in a meat jerky, Slim Jims, those Slim Jim things.
Yeah.
And so that's how bad I wanted to be a doctor. So, I tell that story, how bad do you want to pursue your dream? I wanted it really bad. And
I love it.
so I volunteered in an emergency room in my local community hospital. It all came together for me, got a scholarship, got into all the medical schools I wanted to, and studied emergency medicine. But throughout that, I was a little bit older. I started gaining weight and put on weight and was in the Army as a second lieutenant in medical school. And then I became a captain when I finished medical school. And then during that time, I was actually appointed to be physician, to provide physician coverage to the presidents and vice presidents and secretaries of state, Secretary of State Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice. Really impressive Americans.
Yeah.
And it gave me another view on trying to provide medical care to people that were really short on time, which was an interesting thing. And I had a little break in my military service where I got out of the Army for a while, and during the Afghanistan war, and I had I had 5 kids at that point. So
Wow.
for about 10 years, I was out of the Army, and I set up a concierge medical practice to billionaires. Now, the reason why I say that is because those people, you don't want to be a billionaire. When you got that much kind of money as a physician, those people are so used to the very best food, creme brulee, they can't stop eating, delicious tasting food. So middle America, you guys have got it on. And I actually walked away from those people because I couldn't get them healthy. They're just so, intent on, floating around in their $100 million yachts eating creme brulee, they wouldn't do what they should do to become healthy.
Well, and Dr. Sean, it goes back to what you even said in the beginning, where you got to see that firsthand, what the addiction was like in your police force days.
No, it's so true. It all came together, that addiction. And I think there's very much a commonality, the microbiome, addiction, carbohydrates, feeding that addiction. And I think we're going to find addiction medicine in the future, that one of the first steps you should do to fight an addiction is eliminate carbohydrates from your diet, because I think people become addicted and dependent on that macronutrient carbohydrates. It feeds the wrong kind of microbes inside of your microbiome that drives you to want to eat more and believe that you thrive. But I've been in this particular space. I was an emergency medicine doctor in the Army, and then I recently retired as a full bird colonel from the Army after serving, in the Army for over 20 years, and absolutely love my time. But now I'm a health optimizing physician. I no longer work in emergency medicine. I work with individuals who want to be the best biological versions of themselves. And then I study that process. So I work with people one-on-one. And over the years, I've worked with, thousands of people, and quite a few of them, Heather, have told me once they eliminated carbs, they shared, their addictions that they formerly had that they didn't share with me went away. So They said, well, I never told you this in the beginning, but I was addicted to gambling or drinking or pornography or even prostitutes. I've had people.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then once they got off these carbohydrates, it empowered them with a greater level of discipline to walk away. So if you're listening today and you struggle with alcohol, tobacco, you struggle with pornography or any kind of an addiction, try getting off carbohydrates as a first step to empower you to have greater discipline and the ability to turn away from these addictions. It's absolutely fascinating to me how much people are able to turn away from things that are harming them, and they get greater insights the same kind of tolerance they have to these addictions seems to be present with carbohydrates. They have this thing like, well, I just need them. I just do better at carbohydrates. They have this belief. It's really not the case, but they're not scientific to see. So getting people off carbs, I saw appearance improve, their performance across the board in everything improved.
Wow.
They became better tennis players, better at ping pong, better at CEOs running companies. They became more intelligent, more articulate. Their reactivity, ability to react to things in reaction time tests improved across the board. So literally very, very strong metrics besides the key biological indicators that I think we'll probably talk about. Fat around the heart, fat deep within the muscle, and then the fat that is literally marbleizing humans' muscles. And in the same way that you might see marbleization in a ribeye or a New York strip or some kind of a steak, the same thing starts happening. It's disease in a human being, and it's also diseased in cows. But nobody, and I mean nobody, is talking about that.
No.
It is the craziest thing.
Well, you've already said so many earth-shattering things, like truly the whole carb addiction thing, like that's like earth-shattering. That's crazy. I can't wait for people to hear that and then to see the science probably start to follow it as well. Dr. Sean, do you mind just breaking it down for us? Because for those of you that don't know, he is the visceral fat guy. And so you've kind of started to talk a little bit about the marbleization, that you see sometimes in muscles or around the heart or what have you. So tell us, what is visceral fat? And one thing, Dr. Sean, that I didn't cue you to talk about that I would love for you to share is the diseases that you had and how you watched it get cured by changing what to your diet. I feel like that would be a really great discovery.
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with that last question and explain that, just touch on that and then go into a little bit about visceral fat, because really I would never have gotten to visceral fat without having my own disease process in my body. So I mentioned I was gaining weight. I was, in my break between the Army and my first part of my military service, and before I went back in to finish out and retire. And I was about in my 40s, like most middle-aged Americans. I was getting heavy, but I was accumulating all this disease, severe heartburn. So metaplastic changes in my esophagus causing precancerous lesions that I'd have to be biopsied every 3 months looking for cancer with a big scope going down. And I did that test so many times, I didn't even do sedation anymore. They just shoved this garden hose wide awake going,
oh my gosh.
I remember every detail of that procedure. But when you do it so many times for so many years, you get tired of the medicine and having to, the sedation and being groggy all day. And for me, it was better to be wide awake than to do all that medicine. So severe heartburn, I had discredited cardiovascular disease, so clogged arteries. I had erectile dysfunction. In my 40s, because I had so many clogged arteries, I wasn't able to get an erection.
Wow.
I had an enlarged, and nobody likes talking about it, but you got to talk about it, because if you got ED, and women, if you got husbands that are starting to get soft erections, they've got disease in their body, and it don't just take a medicine to correct the erection. You got to change your husband's life so that he will reverse that problem. So we'll get into that. I had a enlarged prostate, was waking me up 4 to 5 times a night to pee. And so I was getting no sleep. I'd literally have to go to the bathroom to pee, and I'd get a wad of toilet paper and have to put it in my pants because I would drain urine for quite a while afterwards. I mean, it's just a humiliating experience. And I'm only 48. I had restless leg syndrome, kicked my legs all night long. I snored all night long. I'd gasp for air because I had sleep apnea, eczema all over my body, just horrific diseases. Then I meet this very healthy young man in the hospital who turned out, I didn't realize he was only 16 at the time. And he told me, listen, if you want, I said, you're so lean. I said, I wish I could be as lean as you. I used to be like that. And he looked up at me and he says, if you want to lose weight and be lean like me, do the paleo diet. And I looked at him and I said, the paleo diet, what's that? I had never heard of it. And it's like 2009. And so he told me just to eat fresh fruits and vegetables and whole farm and meat, eat fermented vegetables, sprint outdoors in the sunshine, and do fasting and do some fasting. So he told me these things, and I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. And I read about the paleo diet, but within about a year of that, the only expectation I have is, at least intentionally, was to lose weight. And I did lose weight. My big fat dad bod went away, but I remember peeing in front of a toilet and I was blasting away like I used to as a teenager, instead of the dribble that I'd been replaced. And I was peeing super weak. So very excited about that. But at the same time, I became completely disillusioned with the profession of medicine because I realized that a 16-year-old kid gave me lifestyle advice that worked far better than all the drugs that I'd previously been on, and that all of the best experts that I had supposedly access to as a physician and was following their advice and just continuing to get worse. So I was compelled, Heather, to go into research to try to figure out, how do you medically explain these basic lifestyle changes, dietary changes, eliminating, reversing my disease? Because every one of them went away. You know, eventually they scoped me and they said, you're cured. You have absolutely no Barrett's, no cancerous, precancerous lesions anymore. You do not need to be scoped anymore. You do not need any medicine. My erectile dysfunction changed and completely reversed. And then I got you ladies, if you got a husband that's got erection, that's good. But does your husband's erection do this? Bounce? Because that's what we get in our clients to get rid of visceral fat, that they return to an erection like a teenager that has a bounce with every heartbeat. And that is blood flow. And that kind of blood flow only happens when you really optimize your health and get rid of this visceral fat. So that's my story. And then what happened when I went into research is I met a researcher who shared my passion for trying to get people really healthy. And he said, he's a Chinese American. He said, Sean, it's visceral fat. That's what I found out is causing all this chronic disease. So I worked with them. We applied for a grant for the National Science Foundation. We were awarded that grant, and we studied it for 7 years, full time, never took a penny, volunteered full time. Imagine that. You know, any human being that volunteered 7 years of their life with never taking a penny, but that's what I did. And I worked part-time in urgent care. So you can believe that I definitely believed in what I was doing. It was that important. And my family, my wife thought I was crazy. You know, we had barely any money to pay for our kids to go to, their Catholic school uniforms and food and house. I mean, it was really tough times in the Amera family at that time. But I was so committed to figuring out visceral fat and how it was that I could reverse disease through lifestyle changes. So
Dr. Sean, I do have a question for you, because I keep hearing recently, I feel like it's coming up a lot, about sunshine, circadian rhythm, and sprinting. So do you mind just explaining a little bit about, for a mom who's super busy, what does that practically look like? How many times a week should she be sprinting? How long should she be sprinting for? How does that practically play out in your week to week?
Yeah, so sprinting is one of the strategies that we get our clients who work with us to do, because it is so strongly aligned with burning visceral fat and fat around the heart. So sprinting, and just the opposite is jogging. We found that all these runners were coming to us had elevated amounts of visceral fat and fat around their heart. And then if they loved running like I did, I would run 90 minutes every single day. then what happens is it really makes it hard to get rid of that visceral fat and that heart fat. You can do all the strategies like cutting out carbs, but if you keep running, the body just says, hold on to visceral fat, hold on to fat around the heart. And that's probably why we see a lot of distance runners still having heart attacks. They have this inflammatory fat around the heart. So we realized that we got clients to stop jogging and to replace it with sprinting. And within weeks, they'd eliminated their visceral fat with sprinting being substituted and eliminating this visceral fat. So
Wow.
The good news when it comes to sprinting is there's no set formula. Sprinting is something we were all biologically adapted to do throughout all of history. And I would point out the two things that most contributed to how long you lived and how well you lived was how well you fought and how fast you could run, because either you had to escape danger or you had to run to danger and defend your progeny, your children, your fellow human being, and protect them. So sprinting, your capacity to sprint very quickly in a very short period of time, really was directly related to how well you were going to live and how long you're going to survive. So fighting and sprinting really define important traits in human beings. And so because of that, your capacity to do those today, even today, are really important strategies for how well you're going to live. Now, I don't recommend our clients go out and get in bar fights or get fights, but you can lift weights in a manner that simulates fighting. So I now do what I call MIE, maximally intensive exercise. So you do exercise in a maximal way. How hard? As hard as you can do it, okay, in a very short period of time. So I kind of have to emphasize that because people are like, well, you know what? How do I do that? It's like you want to get very short of breath in a very short period of time. You don't need to exercise very much or very frequently. For 15 years now that I've been doing this, I exercise about 15 minutes every 3 days. I barely exercise.
What? This is a game changer for busy moms.
Game changer. A total game changer.
Wow.
But here's the thing, Heather, look at nature. Animals barely exercise. That's what they barely do. It's about 5 minutes of really intensive exercise a day, or 15 minutes, once every 3 days. That's how all the other animal species do it. No other animals fighting for an hour and a half, going to a gym and, running straight for an hour and a half. It's insane that everybody just is completely abandoned the principles in nature. So you want to maximally exercise in a very short period of time, very infrequently, and eat more naturally. And that's what we figured out. So when we targeted this visceral fat, which is this white stuff in the middle of an abdominal scan, this is an MRI scan of the abdomen, fat shows up as white and muscle shows up as dark. So this is, if you ever wondered what your six-pack looks like on an MRI, this is a patient's six-pack, and all this white stuff inside is visceral fat. This is bone is dark, so this is the spinal column. These two little structures here are your core, in case anybody's wondering what is a core workout in your abdomen. That's what your core is. And then your intestines are dark. So when we purposed to start investigating visceral fat, we looked at natural strategies, not what was in science. We paid attention. We started just at fundamentals. What do the animals do? Animals don't have chronic disease. And so all of the din, all of the distraction of what medical science says to do, we ignored, and we just tested what Mother Nature had arranged for all of the species that are occupying the planet that are virtually all free of chronic disease except for one. And my golly, did that give us an advantage, not trying to test all the crappy stuff in science. So we learned, exercising in a very brief manner, We learn not to eat processed foods and to eat foods in whole form. And when we employed those kind of strategies, we saw this go quickly away. And we also noticed that the white here, visceral fat, also forms in the muscles. See these white streaks?
Yeah.
There are those white streaks in the oblique muscles. We notice the same white streaks in the legs. Look at all those white streaks. It looks like Wagyu beef in this guy's legs.
Yeah.
Compared to this guy's legs who has almost no fat. So this guy is an Olympic sprinter. And look at the bounding muscles, all those dark muscles he's got within his abdomen, because this visceral fat is that tiny spot there and those two little areas right there. And his core is kissing his abdominis rectus, his six-pack. And look how thick that six-pack is compared to this skinny little sliver, almond-like six-pack that this gigantic collection of visceral fat in this guy destroys your muscles.
Dang.
So women, if you worry about being this frail little tiny shriveled up woman, it's not because you're old, it's because you're undetected amount of visceral fat accumulating in your abdomen and within your muscles. So your legs look like this when you have visceral fat, your legs look like this when you don't. And when you're 90 or 100 years old, you'll be able to get up if you don't have that fat in your muscle. But nobody else is talking about this except for physicians who work in my practice who become aware of this because we specialize in this particular type of medicine called health optimization, where we're not just trying to get you healthy. We are definitely not a Weight Watchers group. We are, a serious practice to help people become the very best biological versions of themselves possible.
Okay, so question for you then. I feel like, thank the Lord, it is becoming more common to hear strong is the new skinny, like you're building muscles for women especially. I feel like that is starting to become more of the messaging. And Dr. Sean, I will tell you personally, though, I feel like if you looked at a scan of my muscles, though, it probably does look more like that because my thighs are getting larger because I'm building muscle. But I guess what is your thought process for women when you're wanting to build the lean muscle and be intentional, like what you're saying? Like, how much should women be lifting weights versus the sprinting? You know what I'm getting at here?
Yeah. So between weightlifting and sprinting, you want to do both.
Okay.
So sprinting helps you run really fast. Lifting weights is more closely aligned with fighting. So, doing very hard, maximally intensive workouts, but cut them down to like 15-minute, workouts every 3 days where you become way more short of breath, you producing sweat and your pH and your blood is dropping because you're accumulating CO2 from your workout, you're just crushing it like you're fighting for your life. And that's more aligned with producing more fast twitch muscles and burning this dangerous fat in your muscles, which is called myosteatosis or fatty muscle replacement, literally where your muscles start getting replaced with fat. And at the same time, besides that particular fat that starts replacing your muscles, this fat starts surrounding your heart and you get this thick chunk of fat around your heart. But in 3 months, we can work with people to get rid of that heart fat. And this heart fat, if you're listening today, like I'm used to working with, providing medical care to the president. It was always threat mitigation. We had to be ready for a gunshot wound, an explosion, a heart attack, anything might happen. And your number one risk, if you're listening right now, the chances are actuarially, people that specialize in working with statistics on how people are going to die, actuarials will say the number one cause of death is heart attacks. So you're more likely to die, women too, from a heart attack, but that typically happens at a later age than it does for men because women, by and large, have less visceral fat and less of this fat around their heart than males until menopause kicks in. And then once menopause kicks in, you start accumulating all this visceral fat. And I've coined this little phrase. And when that visceral fat, ladies, kicks in right around between 50 and 54 years of age, typically in the average female, the ugly button gets pushed. Because that's when your face starts looking like a man's. And let's be real, let's be honest. You look at your female ancestors, relatives, when they hit menopause, they lost their pretty, effeminate looking faces because their fat depots change from subcutaneous fat, which most women have, to now visceral fat. And so complete change. But you want to track this. You want to pay attention to this. You guys are like beer cans floating in the ocean until you get an MRI scan and figure out what is going on. Am I getting that fat around my heart? Am I getting that fat in my leg muscles? Am I getting that fat within my abdomen? And is it causing this inflammatory change within my face? So kind of give an example of how this looks. Faces change directly as a result of visceral fat. So as visceral fat starts forming within your face, it really influences the appearance of your face. So this is a dramatic change in my face. This was me.
Holy
age
smokes.
48, when I was that guy that learned about paleo. I don't look anything like I do today, but I weighed less than what I do today. Here I was 165 today. I'm closer to 178. And so dramatic change in my face because that visceral fat left me.
Dang. That's crazy.
A better example of how this looks for average people. Ladies, get out your photographs when you were younger. This was me in my 20s, early 40s, 48, and you can see the steady effect of visceral fat. This is not aging. This is diseasing from visceral fat, inflammatory fat around your heart, around your abdomen, and in your muscles, including your facial muscles. If you want to look like a skull, when you're 80 years old, hello, my name is Mary, then you ignore this message about visceral fat at your peril. But don't complain when you don't look like a pretty lady anymore in the mirror. And then this is me when I learned about visceral fat and watch what happens to my face over the next 11 years.
Dang.
And this is the story of everybody who finds out about visceral fat and then figures out how to get rid of it. The problem is almost no doctor knows how to get rid of it. It's not taught in medical school. And if you have faith, you can say a prayer that I can get to Secretary Kennedy, RFK, because this is how MAHA happens. This is how we really make America healthy, by shifting the consumer away from cholesterol, which is just a ruse. Ask yourself, have you ever met a single human being that lowered their cholesterol, got it under control, and then said, my whole life improved? But they have everybody terrified of cholesterol, including what you eat. And it's just to keep you diseasing. But once we shift the consumer mindset to what actually works, which is what you should be targeting, which is this deadly visceral fat in your abdomen, around your heart and your muscles, then everybody in America who learns about that and does that is going to get better, just like I did.
Okay, Dr. Sean, this is so good. And a lot of the women that listen to this podcast are believers. We're very much so about mind, body, and spirit health here. So one of the things that we have not gotten to talk very much about is the paleo diet and how you would recommend, because I think you have said before that you recommend eating for meat and microbes. So will you explain what that would look like? Like, I'm 39. So if you were advising your 39-year-old client, Heather Brown, what to eat on a day-to-day basis, what would that look like?
Yeah. So first, I don't want to alienate anybody. I have vegans who come to me, will not eat meat, and I love them. I work with them and I help them. It's harder, it's slower. The more vegetables you eat, the more carbohydrates you eat, the harder it is to get rid of that visceral fat. But a big introduction is, like you talked about, meat and microbes. Those microbes are absolutely imperative. Nobody else is talking about visceral fat. Nobody else is talking about microbes. So microbes, you got to get through fermented foods. So I'm the only physician out there pushing very, very strongly, not only awareness of visceral fat, but incorporating fermented foods into your diet. So if you're not going to eat meat, for sure, you should be able to at least eat fermented vegetables with the other vegetables you're going to eat. And so I like the living carnivore diet, which is a meat-based diet with fermented vegetables, fermented fruit. Don't be eating fruit. People eat all this fruit out there, and it's filled with fructose. Very problematic for your metabolism, contributes to visceral fat and hepatosteatosis. So cutting out those carbohydrates, including in natural form like fruit, is really important, imperative, and as well as the honey. So I work with people. The paleo diet works. That's how I initially lost all my visceral fat. But then I noticed improvement when I went even lower carb on keto. And so I cut back, on carbohydrates even more. And then I went on the ultimate carbohydrate elimination diet, which is just meat. And I added in fermented vegetables because of my own experience with, fermented vegetables. The objection that carnivores, people eating just meat, have to eating fresh vegetables and are the lectins and oxalates and these microtoxins that are present in plants and including vegetables. So these microtoxins aren't going to kill you in the sense that you're going to become toxified by them and drop dead. It's just the minor trickle, drip, drip, drip of these inflammatory molecules, these toxins, over a period of time lead to autoimmune disorders, so arthritis and Crohn's and irritable bowel and deficient microbiomes and problems. So the way to consume them in a safe form where the oxalates, these mycotoxins, are eliminated is by fermenting them. So I eat just meat and only vegetables in fermented form. But I work with people that still, are wanting to eat these fresh vegetables, and I work with them, and gradually people just get more and more off of vegetables and only eating fermented vegetables and fermented fruit along with meat. And I think that is the best strategy. I don't own diets. I don't own anything except my 19-year-old car. And so I could use any dietary strategy I want or follow any marker that I want, but I choose these because they're the best I have seen in 30 years of practice in medicine to get people to actually eliminate disease and optimize their health.
Interesting. So, Dr. Sean, I feel like we're so quickly running out of time, so I want to be respectful of your time, but I do want to ask you a few quick closeout ones, if that's okay. I've heard you talk a lot on other social media about cutting out alcohol also, because alcohol also leads a lot to the visceral fat, and I've had multiple other episodes where we talked about that, so that's not foreign to us. But I am curious, there's a lot of health and wellness influencers coming out now talking specifically about, and if you want to get off alcohol, you should get on these gummies. They're called Serenity Now, I think is what I've seen in some of the brands, where it's essentially, I guess, CBDs basically to almost replace it, or some form of D9 or something. What is your thought on that if you are trying to wean off of alcohol, or is that just a terrible idea for your health too and visceral fat?
Yeah, well, it might get you off alcohol, but get you on cannabinoids. So CBD are natural, organic cannabinoid molecules that exist in nature. I would submit that you're better off getting off carbohydrates and try that. But I will say, as a scientist, I'm open to seeing how these CBD molecules might be able to be used as a strategy for somebody who's severely alcohol dependent. And then maybe they're able to eliminate CBD. But if you're exchanging one thing for another and you become dependent on it, I'm not sure that you've done yourself a big service. And then CBD comes with other, long-term problems that we're seeing with long-term use of CBD. So alcoholics, actually, there's a condition, write this down if you drink a lot, auto brewery syndrome, or what happens is people that have certain species of microbes eat carbohydrates, it produces intoxicating levels of alcohol. So they'll go to an Italian restaurant, have no alcohol to drink, eat just spaghetti, and then become legally intoxicated, get pulled over, get arrested, blow a blood alcohol level that's above the legal limit, and have a blood alcohol level, if it's drawn in their blood, above the legal limit. Nobody believes that they didn't have alcohol. They are prosecuted. They go to jail. They get a criminal record. And it's just from these species of microbes inside their gut. So auto brewery syndrome is real. I did a show on it, a national radio show, and all these people will have it. We're calling in. It's an example of where, in the criminal justice system, we've not yet caught up with science. So I think it's really important that we get educated to include about alcohol, addictions, and things like that. I'm telling you, Heather, it's in the gut. We just don't have it all figured out yet.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, Dr. Sean, I asked everybody this question in closing, so I'd love to ask you too. What is the best way that you reset for either mind, body, or spirit health?
My favorite thing is to go outside and walk in the sunshine and sprint occasionally in the sunshine. A little blast of sprints in between my walking is the way I get an ultimate reset in the sunshine with very little clothing on. So I like to get max amount of sunshine at the same time.
So good. Well, Dr. Sean, it was an honor to have you today. Tell everybody where they can connect with you online, and then I'll let you get to your next appointment. Yeah.
So if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, you can go to my website, which is my name, DrSeanomara.com. If you don't want to work with me, but maybe you want to be a part of my tribe, I've got this cool Alpha Maker program where I make alphas online. You don't have to come to me, and you can get to the Alpha Maker program by going to another website, which is growingbetternotolder.com. growingbetternotolder.com. It's the bicycle version of getting yourself healthy. Do it yourself. But if you want the private charter jet, come work with me, do full body MRI scans, spend a whole day with me one-on-one. That's DrSeanomara.com.
Love it so much. You were a joy. Thank you so much, Dr. Sean. And Girl Gang, I hope you have the best week. I'll see you next Tuesday. Have a blessed day. Y'all know I'm obsessed with all things optimal health, as clearly evidenced here on the podcast. Well, let me tell you about a new company and supplement line that I feel is truly going to change the face of not only our health, but also aging. Enter the crazy and amazing world of peptides. I know you've heard a ton about pharmaceutical kinds, the Ozempics, the Wegovy's of the world, all kinds of crazy with the results that people are getting, but also scary in regards to the possible side effects. What if we could get the same results with a peptide that was made in nature instead of a lab? That's where Make Wellness comes in and their line of bioactive precision peptides. You want to be leaner? You want to be fitter? Want to be more hydrated, more energized, focused, all of the above? I am literally obsessed with these, you guys, and I know you will be too. This is the future of where health is headed. Everything is linked in the show notes, so make sure to check them out. I think you're going to be just as obsessed as I am. Okay, friend, that's a wrap on this week's episode. If you're not already following me on Instagram, make sure to screenshot this episode, share it to your stories, and tag @Healthy by Heather Brown so I can connect with you in my DMs. It truly brings me so much joy to see how these episodes impact you. Make sure to subscribe so we can see you back here next Tuesday for our weekly show. In case you don't know, your downloads, ratings, and reviews are the actual lifeblood of this podcast, and it helps spread the word to your friends and family. So So please hit the download button on this episode and leave a 5-star rating if you super loved it. And if we're really BFFs, you'll spread the happy and text this podcast link to someone who needs to hear it today for some encouragement. Scroll down to the show notes on this episode to see any and all links mentioned, freebies to fuel your health goals, prayer-related episodes, and the 7-day free trial of my exclusive membership where I personally coach and cheer you on in whole health. While you're there, make sure to check out my Amazon storefront with healthy snacks, my favorite look for less workout outfits, and books and devotionals that challenge me in my faith. If you ever need to find my Amazon storefront, just Google Healthy by Heather Brown Amazon and it will come up. Have a great day, Girl Gang.